Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful for everyone to join us again. Tonight, I want to talk about a very, very important topic, and that's what happens after primary school. What happens at a high school level? What do we do? And especially if we have a child who has some kind of barrier to learning. And here I want to talk about the neurodiverse child. So we're talking about a child that may have barriers to learning, such as concentration issues or autism, or whatever. What do we do with that child? What is it? And what we want to say is, definitely, my definition of neurodiversity is about being equal. We don't want to say that something is better than something else, it's just different. And so that is definitely my definition of it. I want to read to you two formal definitions that people have said in terms of literature now by somebody called Nirenberg, and their definition was, neurodiversity embraces the variety of brain makeups found in the human species. And for me, that's a very good definition because we're all different varieties. And then the second one is, neurodiversity describes the idea that people experience and interact with the world around them in many different ways. There is no one way of thinking, learning, and behaving. And that's by two researchers called Baumer and Frew from 2021. So I think it's very, very important for us to understand neurodiversity in that sense. We're not talking about better or worse, we're talking about different. And both of those definitions will say that, and that's really my point of view. It's not better or worse, it's always just different. All right, so let's take this idea of a high school child a little further. And there we're talking about a child that's in grade 8, starting grade 8. And of course, that's fraught with a lot of issues and possibilities. If you just think of a change from a primary school to a high school, that in itself is difficult. It's a new environment possibly, and that brings with it many, many emotional issues. And I think we must be aware of that. Never mind a child who may have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. That is impossible for a child to negotiate, and we would like to support such a child. We want to say to that child, don't worry, we will support you. This is not a problem. You have emotional issues in changing from primary school to high school, and even to the point of saying to that child, we will support whatever areas there are that you need support in. And I think that's our school in a nutshell. That's what we want to do. Of course, we are a primary school, so for many of our children, the transition is fairly easy. They know the environment, and they move on from primary school to high school. And I think that's an advantage because we don't have to negotiate a new place, a new environment. And that is a positive for sure. But if you think of it, if you as an adult have to be in a new work environment, that's difficult. Straight away, new people, new places. Where's the toilet? What about this? What about that? There are so many things that go through a person's mind on those first couple of days. And for a child, surely it's got to be much, much worse. And for a child who has certain areas where they need a lot of support, it's even worse. It's very intimidating, I think. And we want to say to you at our school, we would like to support such a child all the way through. Even if the child is starting in grade 8 for the very first time with us, we will support that child. And I would like to talk about how we support the child and what areas there are that we would lend support in. Because I often say to parents, it's no good just hearing, we'll support your child. I think it's very, very important to know how you're going to support the child. And I would like to discuss some of those areas with you today. Okay, so let's talk about how to support a child. How are we going to do that? And for me, there are a number of areas. So let's start off with, first of all, a smaller class environment. I think that is vital for any child. Obviously, it's an advantage, but for a child where they have specific areas where they need support, a smaller class is surely very, very important. And therefore, you can be more individual with that child, and you can help that child with that child's particular needs. So that's the first part. Secondly, I think, and teachers at our school probably get annoyed with me because it's often not about a qualification. It's often about the type of person. You need to be empathic. You need to be caring. You need to really be patient with everyone. And I think that is a personality type. That's not necessarily a qualification. So that's the kind of person that I want working in our environment. Somebody who will take your child and be very patient, caring, and so on. And I think those are the important things for a child to know, that their teacher is someone they can trust and that they can work with. It's not to say that the qualification isn't also important. I think our teachers need to be well qualified in an area. And for us, it's about inclusion. It's about a child with remedial needs. And they need to be well qualified in any case. So I think the qualifications are very, very important, and we have many teachers who are studying further, whether it's an honours or a master's or something like that, and I think it's very important for them to have the latest knowledge from their universities in terms of these kinds of situations. I think it's very, very, very important as well. We also do a lot of in-service training. Now, those of you who in a work environment will know what I mean there. It's about the teachers being up to speed with everything. So the latest techniques in terms of assisting a child with ASD, what do we do, how do we do things, and for us it's very, very important in terms of the in-service training, and I think that's an aspect that's vital. For any child in any environment, there has to be in-service training. We want people to be on the cutting edge of everything. They must have the latest knowledge, and for us that in-service training is very important. Every week we'll have different training, and I think that way our teachers stay up to speed with everything. Of course, the other side of things is in fact, it was interesting, I was talking to somebody and they were saying, what about concessions or some kind of accommodations? And obviously at our school, it's a standard thing. Every child that requires concessions or accommodations of any sort, whether it be extra time or a scribe or a reader or a separate venue or a spelling concession, we will do that, and that's very easy for us to do all the way through to matric. And did you know even that you can continue that even at university level for certain subjects and certain courses? You can continue those concessions, and I think that's important to know, that you can go from primary school to high school to even tertiary studies later on, and I think it's very important that that is in place, because a child may require that all the way through. And that brings me to what we want to talk about in terms of what we offer for matric. And matric, as I've said before, is not vital in itself. We don't want to use that as a platform to just university studies. We want to talk about that as a platform to a career or tertiary studies, if you like. And that is not necessarily 6 degrees in a certain field or whatever. It may be that the child is interested in baking and they want to take up something to do with baking, and that's okay. So there will be some tertiary studies to teach you how to bake. I'm terrible, I don't know anything about baking a cake. I know there's flour involved, but they will teach you a little bit better. So we will do it at school, and then tertiary studies will take it further, and then possibly opening a restaurant or a bakery, whatever the case is. So I think that's what we want to engender in terms of our children across the board. One of the areas that's very important to me as well is the area where a child shows a particular interest or passion in something. And sometimes it's not only that they show an interest and passion, it's sometimes that they are not interested in a particular thing. And there I want to use the example of technology. So sometimes children are just not interested in anything to do with technology, whether it be computers or tablets or whatever the case is, they may not. And so that's important to know. So that child will certainly not follow a career in that world because they're not interested in that world. Or let's say a child is very interested in the sporting world. Now, traditionally, you wouldn't think that that is a career that a person would want to follow, but we're saying if that is a child's interest and that is a passion, we would like to support that child to achieve that at some level. Or anything else along those lines. Anything. It doesn't have to be a lawyer or a dentist or a doctor or whatever. That's not vital for me. It's much more about being able to bring out your passions and your interests all the way through to matric. And remember, we're not only talking about a bachelor pass. Somebody was saying to me about what is the percentage of bachelor passes compared to the complete matric pass, whatever the case is. And for me, it's not about that. It's about achieving a matric as a platform to something else. So it may be a diploma pass or a certificate pass, or it could even be a bachelor pass, bachelor degree pass. It could be. So we have the potential to do all of those different things. And for me, one is not better than another. They are just different things leading to different things. And for me, at this school, it's very, very important for us to know that that's how we're going to support the child all the way through to matric. And also, if 6 subjects or 7 subjects is too much at a time, we would like to say to the child, look, let's do 3 subjects that you can handle this year, let's do some more next year, and we can do it over 2 years. And that's an IB curriculum, and it's fine, as long as eventually in matric we have enough subjects and we have enough credits. I think that's where we're going. And then also, as I've said also before, we will guarantee a child, if a child passes in our world, and a pass can mean any of those things, certificate, diploma, bachelor degree, if they finish matric or complete matric, they are able to study further at a tertiary institution at some point. So it's not necessarily a university. It could be a university, but it's not only a university. It would also be a college or something else to bring out that career path furthermore. So for us, it's about support. It's about supporting all children with problems and areas where traditionally they wouldn't find a place in a traditional so-called mainstream high school. And why should we say mainstream high school is better than some? It's just different. And a child will achieve certain things in that area, and that's fine. But I want to support the child who maybe would not traditionally fit into a mainstream environment. We want to support the child in our environment all the way through to matric and beyond. One of the areas that I would like to expand on a little bit is the path to tertiary studies. And you'll notice that I didn't say university studies there, it's tertiary studies. Tertiary meaning third level studies after school. So your child will achieve a matric, and that's no problem, but it is only the secondary path. So tertiary is after that. And we have a wonderful tool where we make your life a lot easier, and we say, look, if your child is interested in this, they've chosen those subjects, what are they going to do further? And we can guarantee them entrance to particular courses after school, and that's what we want to do. And I'd like to share that tool with you now. And I also want to mention the subject choices that we've been very specific about. And in our world, it's important for a child to have a lot of support in all the subjects. So we do English, we do a first additional language, we do maths or maths literacy, and I'm a fan of maths literacy, if I have to be honest with everyone, because it is a very practical subject, and I prefer for a child to be practical about things. Why do maths all the way to matric if you don't need it? If you're going to be an engineer or something, you might need the maths, but rather do something practical. So the maths literacy, and then we do life orientation. And for me, that's a very important subject because a child needs to be able to survive throughout the world with different areas, different things, and we use the basic curriculum as a guide, and then if there's something topical, we'll talk about it, we'll discuss it, and I think that's very important for a child of today. They need to know what's going on in the world around them, not just a soundbite or a very small snippet in something. They need to discuss it. Why do I feel the way I feel? And we do that. Then we also do tourism, and tourism is very, very important because I think a child also needs to know the environment in Africa, South Africa, and the world. They need to explore that. They need to know what areas of the world will have certain things, and I think that's very important. So tourism is a part of our curriculum as well. And after that, there are choice studies. So we talk about visual art. So visual art is for the child who possibly has a talent in painting or drawing or something like that, and they will pursue a career further on in that. Now again, probably not an academic career, but it will be a career because that's their strength, and I think that's very important. So we do visual art as well. We do a thing called CAT, so that's computer applications technology, and again, vital in today's world. It's very, very important for a child to be able to manipulate a computer, use different programs, and so on. And it's not an easy subject in that sense. It's a subject where you're taught how to use things, and I've learned a lot of things as I've gone along. I've taught myself many of the programs, and I think if I had some kind of formal study, it would have helped me a lot in terms of how to use particular programs, and that's computer applications technology. We also do hospitality at our school, and that's for events really, but it's also about cooking and baking and preparing for an event. So we do that as well at our school. We also do business studies, and that's very important for entrepreneurs as well, to understand the differences between profit and loss. I don't want to spend too much money in order to make too little money, and we do that, and it's across the board. So it has a practical component. All of these subjects you can see will have a practical component as well as a theoretical component, and I think that's very important as well. A child needs both sides of things, and if they need more support in terms of the theoretical side, we will give that. If they need less support for the practical side, that's great, and I think for a child that's also very, very important. One of the subjects that's very close to my heart is why an assisted learning environment? Why would you choose to come to a school that you may feel is not a mainstream school, for instance? And I would say to you, if your child needs support, and we talk about neurodiversity, and we're talking about children with many areas where they may need support, and I feel at our school, because of what we've said in terms of a small class or specifically trained teachers or whatever the case is, I feel our environment would be best for such a child. Let's say a child is at the end of grade 7 and they've battled and struggled from grade 4, 5, 6, 7, they've struggled every year. Then I think they need an environment which would support them across the board. So whether that's from a learning assisted environment or a mainstream environment, if a child has struggled and a child is going to high school at some point, I think it's very, very important that you can feel relaxed in the sense that that child will get the support he or she requires at that point. And we can definitely provide that. The little ones, we can do occupational therapy or whatever the case is, but we're talking about a high school now, so it's different kind of support, but it's still support. And I feel every child has that potential, probably. We've just got to find a way to unlock that potential, and we've got many ways to do that and to support the child and to unlock the potential. And I think at our school, at the Bridge, we really can do something like that. We really can support the child.